I'm Jenny here with FabTV for the movie Leap. And my first question is for Lydia. Lydia, you'd never appeared on camera before this movie. And in this film, you were cast in a lead role directed by the most successful Hong Kong filmmaker. What was your experience when you first received the script, and how was it playing your mother?
First off, when Peter reached out to me, I had no acting background, and I just found out, oh my gosh, they're making a movie about my mom. What an amazing experience. And so, not only was acting a huge challenge for me, but I think at the beginning, what was the most fun was actually doing research about my mom when she was younger, because I've only known about her achievements, but we've never actually talked about it, or I've never actually seen her play. And so that was just the beginning of this entire journey. And I had no idea how much I would learn from it. And I think what I loved the most about playing my mom when she was younger was that I thought she was so brave. And it was just so fun playing her because I could be brave too. And I think that was what I got the most out of it.
Lydia, you played volleyball since you were 14. So how did you approach the volleyball scenes?
I think what really helped me was like one day we were on set and I was just looking around and I saw that they had these props that were just basically all of the medical things that were available for athletes at the time. And it was literally just like some cotton swabs and like some metal tweezers. And I immediately was just like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Because these girls are just throwing themselves on the floor and just like jumping all the time. And this is all of the medical help that they get. Whereas, I played volleyball at Stanford and it was just, now we have access to so much. And for me, that stark contrast just really showed me that at the time, the girls were just literally playing with their lives and they literally had like nothing really else to do except play volleyball and just keep winning. And for me, that was one of the eye-opening moments when we were filming, when I was like, wow, these girls are really brave.
Peter, since you were already an accomplished director, what was it like working with a completely green actor?
It's really hard to say. And I would like to add a little bit about casting Lydia. That was probably one of the biggest roll of the dice in my career. She had absolutely no acting experience. And she was a little bit overweight for the character she was supposed to play because her mother was really lanky. And she was a little bit older than her mother was. And I have to say, Lydia, how many pounds did you lose to play your mother within what, a month?
Yeah, I lost 30 pounds.
Yeah, and that was a commitment. And at the fact that when we started deciding on Lydia, because there was nobody else we could go to that actually could get the essence of Lang Ping, of her mother, which is a national hero in China to the extent that you would not believe. It's more than probably any movie star in China. It's like Bruce Lee, okay? It's like playing Bruce Lee. So no matter who you cast, the audience are not going to buy it. So we thought casting her daughter was our only option. And her daughter being American and speaks Chinese with an accent, Lang Ping completely told us it's impossible for her to play someone in the 80s. But however, she really did capture the essence of her mother with a lot of conviction. I think she has something to prove to her mother. And I remember there was a line that almost made me tear up when we were doing all the scenes of the practicing. And there was a scene that I thought she should cry. And I told her what to do. And then she told me, my mother would not cry in the stadium. She would actually walk out. And she would actually give me scenes or give me reactions. So as a director, I was really blessed with not just Lydia, but with all the players that played in the 80s and that played the 80s players. They were all national heroes, but the people that portray them are all people that didn't make the cut to the national team today. There are people that play in universities, in clubs, in province team, and they're all really good very good volleyball players that didn't make the cut to the national team. So everyone came to the movie with a conviction, and every single actress and athlete knows the sports much better than I do. So to a certain extent, I was like the observer. I was just learning as a student and doing multiple choice. And back to your question for me about taking on this epic scale of a film that lasts 40 years, I think the hardest thing is not production. The hardest thing was trying to put it into a context of a 2 hours, 2 hours. And our mandate was you can't make a movie longer than 2.5 hours. I tried to split into the two films. Can I make 2 2 hours film? And between distribution and investors, it was impossible. We had to make one film with a span of 40 years, and at the same time, because of how the people in China loves the Chinese women's volleyball team, also as a spirit, because as you know, the rise of the Chinese women's national volleyball team started in the late 70s, early 80s, coinciding with the open door policy and the economic reform of China after decades of China being a closed country. So it represents a rapid change of China. It represents hopes in the 80s, which are things that I've been hearing over and over again in my last 15, 18 years working in China, because I never lived the 80s in China. I'm from Hong Kong, and I've lived in Hong Kong, which is a very, very different place than China, and than mainland China. And I never set foot in China until 1993. But everything that I've been hearing all my life in China from friends of mine are how beautiful and how hopeful and how China was filled with immense possibilities. So I really want to capture the 80s in China. But however, I can't, even though the movie is about Lang Ping, but I can't make a Lang Ping biopic because Chinese women's volleyball is too big for the audience of China to make it into a story about one person. So we had to struggle between it being a Lang Ping biopic because Lang Ping is all over the history of Chinese women's volleyball. And even today, she's the head coach today, which, they're going to the Tokyo Olympics in July. So all this, it was extremely difficult to put in a context of 2.5 hours. So I think that was the most difficult thing, not the production and not the traveling and not the sports and not the how many cameras we use and stuff like that.
And Peter, how did you direct these very high, dramatic, high action volleyball scenes?
Let me introduce my DP a little bit. You know, the Chinese film industry has become very young, and I'm the oldest member of the production team, even though most directors are. But I'm much older than most people that work for me. Most of them are in their 20s or in their 30s. It's a very young, it's becoming younger and younger. And I wanted an eye of someone who lived through the 80s. So I work with a DP that I've never worked with, who's my age, from the mainland. And he was actually graduated in the first class of the Film Academy with Zhang Yimou and Chen Kai-ge. He was the youngest of the class, so he's actually my age. He was born in '62. He actually witnessed the whole '80s in China, so that was very important for me. I have an eye who have actually seen the '80s, who would help me. We shot 3 scenes of volleyball. The first scene was the scene with the male volleyball team, with the men's team, and then we did it like our usual, movie shoots where we break down everything in shots, one by one and one by one. So like this is the shot, and then we do 3 cameras, 4 cameras, And then it took 6 days to shoot that short scene. Okay. And then we decided that we can't keep doing that because that would take forever. And we can't capture the essence of volleyball that way. So the second scene was a scene with the Japanese team. It's almost like chronological order. The second scene was the 1981 championship with the match with the Japanese team. And then we use 6 cameras and we make sure that the Japanese team and the Chinese team looked at the actual footage and tried to make sure that they play uh, how they serve and how the ball ends up getting the point. You know, the beginning and the end has to be exactly the same with what happened. And in the middle, you just got to let them play because you can't control where the ball goes, you know. As good as they are as the players, but they can't really recreate a team like Magic. So we used 6 cameras and we got by and we shot in 6 to 7 days. Okay, the second scene, and it was still not good enough to a certain extent because, and it was a blast for us because I invited all my friends over on set because we're like watching a real game, you know, because they're really playing for real. And then when we did the third scene, and this is another part of an information that I'm going to give you, I was so blessed to have been given the permission to use the real national team today who played the Rio Olympics to come on set and act for us for 10 days. Those are all real athletes, real players with absolutely no acting experience. You know, their acting were taken care by an acting coach, but because they were only here for 9 days, so I can't shoot the scene for 6 days or 7 days because, as you know, there are a lot of other scenes that I needed to shoot. So we only had 3 days to shoot the scene in Rio. And we cast the Brazilian team through a sports club, a sports agent who helped us organize to hire all the Brazilian players. And 3 of them were from the national team, ex national team players. And 2 of them have actually played the game in 2016 in Rio with China. So they're actually doing the same thing that they've done before. But then again, it's impossible for them to recreate the scene, you know, hit by hit. So we knew that we have to do the same way that we did with the game with Japan. But however, we only had 3 days. So we hired 6 more cameras. And the 6 cameras came from the CCTV sports channel with professional uh, cameraman that knows how to shoot volleyball. So we were shooting with 12 cameras, and they just played. They just played like 17 hours a day for 3 days. And I think, I mean, the volleyball players, the national team players, all told me they didn't know it's that difficult making a movie because when they play their games or they do their practice, it's like 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day. But they're like playing 17 hours a day volleyball on set as if it's a real competition.
Okay, Ricardo, I'll answer your question now. So, I think it was very serendipitous that my mom and we both play the same position. And, I played volleyball for about 13 years and then played in the D1 school. And it was just very lucky that we both played the same position. And how I approached those volleyball scenes, I think, first off, I watched a lot of my mom's previous games. And so that was just so fun. And I also looked at how she interacted with her teammates in between points, and then how she also celebrated. Because, one thing is that I remember when we were first filming some volleyball scenes, our producer said, Lydia, like, you celebrate too much like an American. Like, you are smiling way too much. You are just way excited. We need to tone it down, So, and then that put me back in the frame of mind. Okay, yes, I need to go back to what I watched and sort of internalize a little bit more about how I was feeling. And then another thing is that I thought that the volleyball scenes would be easier because I'm a player, you know, acting, well, I've never done it before. Volleyball scenes were definitely not easy. You know, because every shot I had to put 100% of my effort in because I couldn't let my mom down. I knew that if I like held back a little bit, she could immediately tell when watching the movie, like, oh, you didn't do your best like on that shot. I know. And then I think other than that, it just was extremely natural. And I think it just took me back to being a player again. And I remember the last day when we finished filming the volleyball scenes, I cried because, you know, it was saying goodbye to volleyball again, and also saying goodbye to how brave my mom was playing.